Chapter 20, Locomotion and Movement. Movement is one of the significant features of living being. Animals and plants exhibit a wide range of movement. Streaming of protoplasm in the unicellular organism like amoeba is a simple form of movement. Movement of cilia, flagella and tentacles are shown by many organisms. Human being can move limbs, jaws, eyelids, tongue, etc. Some of the movement result in a change of place or locomotion. Such voluntary movements are called locomotion. Walking, running, climbing, flying, swimming are all some forms of locomotory movement. Locomotory structure need not to be different from those affecting other types of movement. For example, in paramecium, cilia helps in the movement of food through cytopharynx and in locomotion as well. Hydra can use its tentacle for capturing its prey and also use them for locomotion. We use limbs for changes in body posture and locomotion as well. The above observation suggests that movement and locomotion cannot be studied separately. The two may be linked by stating that all locomotions are movement but all movements are not locomotion. Method of locomotion performed by animals vary with their habitats and the demand of the situation. However, locomotion is generally for search of food, shelter, mate, suitable breeding ground, favorable climatic condition, or to escape from enemy's predator. 20.1 Types of movement. Cell of the human body exhibit three main types of movements, namely amoeboid, ciliary, and muscular. Some specialized cells in our body like macrophages and leukocytes in blood exhibit amoeboid movement. It is affected by pseudopodia formed by the streaming of protoplasm as in amoeba. Cytoskeletal elements like microfilament are also involved in amoeboid movement. Ciliary movements occur in most of our internal tubular organs which are lined by ciliated epithelium. The coordinated movement of cilia in the trachea help us in removing dust particles and some of the foreign substance inhaled along with the atmospheric air. Passage of ova through the female reproductive tract is also facilitated by the ciliary movement. Movement of our limbs, jaws, tongue, etc. require muscular movement. The contractile property of muscle are effectively used for locomotion and other movements by human being and majority of multicellular organisms. Locomotion requires perfect coordinated activity of muscular, skeletal and neural system. In this chapter, you will learn about the types of muscles, their structure, mechanism of their contraction and important aspect of the skeletal system. 20.2 Muscle. You have studied in chapter 8 that the cilia and flagella are the outgrowth of the cell membrane. Flagellar movement helps in the swimming of the spermatozoa, maintenance of water current in the canal system of sponges, and in locomotion of protozoans like euglena. Muscle is a specialized tissue of mesodermal origin. About 40 to 50% of the body weight of a human adult is contributed by muscle. They have special properties like excitability, contractility, extensibility, and elasticity. Muscle have been classified using different criteria, namely locomotion, appearance, and nature of regulation of their activities. Based on their locomotion, three types of muscles are identified. First, skeletal, second, visceral, and third, cardiac. Skeletal muscles are closely associated with the skeletal component of the body. They have a striped appearance under the microscope and hence are called striated muscle. As their activity are under the voluntary control of the nervous system, they are also known as voluntary muscle too. They are primarily involved in locomotory actions and changes of body posture. Visceral muscle are located in the inner wall of hollow visceral organ of the body like the alimentary canal, reproductive tract, etc. They do not exhibit any striation and are smooth in appearance. Hence, they are called smooth muscle, non-striated muscle. Their activities are not under the voluntary control of the nervous system and are therefore known as involuntary muscle. They assist, for example, in the transportation of food through the digestive tract and gametes through the genital tract. As the name suggests, cardiac muscles are the muscle of heart. Many cardiac muscle cells assemble in a branching pattern to form a cardiac muscle. Based on appearance, cardiac muscle are striated. They are involuntary in nature, as the nervous system does not control their activities directly. Let us examine a skeletal muscle in a detail to understand the structure and mechanism of contraction. Each organized skeletal muscle in our body is made of a number of muscle bundle or fascicle held together by a common collagenous connective tissue layer called fascia. Each muscle bundle contains a number of muscle fibers. Figure 20.1. Each muscle fiber is lined by the plasma membrane called sarcolemma enclosing the sarcoplasm. Figure 2. Figure 20.1. Diagrammatic cross-sectional view of a muscle showing muscle bundle and muscle fiber. Muscle fiber is a syncytium, as the sarcoplasm contains many nuclei. The endoplasmic reticulum, that is sarcoplasmic reticulum of the muscle fiber, is the storehouse of calcium ion. A characteristic feature of the muscle fiber is the presence of a large number of parallelly arranged filament in the sarcoplasm called myofilament or myofibrils. Each myofibril has alternate dark and light band on it. A detailed study of the myofibril has established that the striated appearance is due to the distribution pattern of two important proteins, actin and myosin. The light band contains actin and is called I band or isotropic band, whereas the dark band called A or anisotropic band contains myosin. Both the protein are arranged as rod-like structure parallel to each other and also to the longitudinal axis of the myofibrils. Actin filament are thinner as compared to the myosin filament, hence are commonly called thin and thick filament respectively. In the center of each I band is an elastic fiber called Z-line, which bisect it. The thin filament are firmly attached to the Z line. The thick filaments in the A band are also held together in the middle of this band by a thin fibrous membrane called M line. The A and I band are arranged alternately throughout the length of the myofibril. The portion of the myofibril between two successive Z lines is considered as the functional unit of contraction and is called a sarcomere. Figure 20.2. In a resting state, the edges of thin filament on either side of the thick filament partially overlap the three ends of the thick filament, leaving the central part of the thick filament. This central part of a thick filament not overlapped by thin filament is called the edge zone. Figure 20.2. Diagrammatic representation of A. Anatomy of a muscle fiber showing of a sarcomere. B. A sarcomere. 20.2.1. Structure of contractile protein. Each actin thin filament is made of two F filamentaceous actin helically wound to each other. Each F actin is a polymer of monomeric G globular actin. Two filament of another protein, tropomyosin, also run close to the F actin throughout its length. A complex protein, troponin, is distributed at regular interval of the tropomyosin. In the resting state, a subunit of troponin masks the active binding site for myosin on the actin filament. Figure 20.3a. Each myosin thick filament is also a polymerized protein. Many monomeric protein called meromyosin, figure 20.3b, constitute one thick filament. Each meromyosin has two important parts, a globular head with a short arm and a tail. The former being called the heavy meromyosin HMM and the latter the light meromyosin LMM. The HMM component, that is the head and short arm, projects outward at regular distance and angle from each other from the surface of a polymerized myosin filament and is known as cross arm. The globular head is an active ATPase enzyme and has binding site for ATP and active site for actin, troponin, tropomyosin, effectin. A and P, actin binding site, ATP binding site, head and cross arm. Figure 20.3, A, an actin thin filament, B, myosin monomer myomyosin. 20.2.2 Mechanism of muscle contraction. Mechanism of muscle contraction is best explained by the sliding filament theory, which states that contraction of a muscle fiber takes place by the sliding of the thin filament over the thick filament. Muscle contraction is initiated by a signal sent by the central nervous system CNS via motor neuron. A motor neuron along with the muscle fiber connects to it constitute a motor unit. The junction between a motor neuron and the sarcolemma of the muscle fiber is called the neuromuscular junction or motor end plate. A neural signal reaching this junction releases a neurotransmitter acetylcholine, which generates an action potential in the sarcolemma. This spreads through the muscle fiber and causes the release of calcium ion into the sarcoplasm. Increase in calcium level leads to the binding of calcium with a subunit of troponin on actin filament and thereby remove the masking of active site for myosin. Utilizing the energy from ATP hydrolysis, the myosin head now binds to the exposed active site on actin to form a cross bridge. Figure 20.4 Figure 20.4 stages in cross bridge formation, rotation of head and breaking of cross bridge. Pulls the attached actin filament towards the center of A band. The Z line attached to this actin are also pulled inwards, thereby causing a shortening of the sarcomere, that is contraction. It is clear from the above steps that during shortening of the muscle, that is contraction, the I band get reduced whereas the A band retain the length. Figure 20.5 The myosin releasing the ADP and P1 goes back to its relaxed state. A new ATP binds and the cross bridge is broken. Figure 20.4 The ATP is again hydrolyzed by the myosin head and the cycle of cross bridge formation. Figure 20.5 Sliding filament theory of muscle contraction, movement of thin filament and the relative size of the I band and edge zone, and breakage is repeated, causing further sliding. The process continues till the calcium ion are pumped back to the sarcoplasmic cisternae, resulting in the masking of actin filament. This caused the return of cell line back to their original position, that is relaxation. The reaction time of the fiber can vary in different muscle. Repeated activation of the muscle can lead to the accumulation of lactic acid due to anaerobic breakdown of glycogen in them, causing fatigue. Muscle contain a red colored oxygen storing pigment called myoglobin. Myoglobin content is high in some of the muscle, which gives a reddish appearance. Such muscles are called the red fibers. These muscles also contain plenty of mitochondria, which can utilize the large amount of oxygen stored in them for ATP production. These muscles therefore can also be called aerobic muscle. On the other hand, some of the muscles possesses very less quantity of myoglobin and therefore appear pale or whitish. These are the white fibers. Number of mitochondria are also few in them, but the amount of sarcoplasmic reticulum is high. They depend on anaerobic process for energy. 20.3 Skeletal system. Skeletal system consists of a framework of bones and a few cartilages. This system has a significant role in movement shown by the body. Imagine chewing food without jaw bones and walking around without the limb bones. Bones and cartilages are specialized connective tissue. The former has very hard matrix due to calcium salt in it, and the latter has significantly pliable matrix due to chondroitin salt. In human beings, this system is made up of 206 bones and a few cartilages. It is grouped into two principal divisions, the axial and the appendicular skeleton. Axial skeleton comprises 80 bones distributed along the main axis of the body. The skull, vertebral column, sternum and ribs constitutes axial skeleton. The skull, figure 20.6, is composed of two sets of bone. Figure 20.6, diagrammatic view of human skull, cranial and facial. The total to 22 bones. Cranial bones are 18 number. They form the hard protective outer covering, cranium for the brain. The facial region is made up of 14 skeletal elements which form the front part of the skull. A single U-shaped bone called hypoid is present at the base of the buccal cavity. And it is also included in the skull. This line is cut from NCERT. Now, in 2025, each middle ear contains three tiny bones, malleus, incus, and steps, collectively called ear ossicle. The skull region articulates with the superior region of the vertebral column with the help of two occipital dicondylic skull. Our vertebral column, figure 20.7, is formed by 26 serially arranged units called vertebrae and is dorsally placed. It extends from the base of the skull and constitutes the main framework of the trunk. Each vertebrae has a central hollow portion, neural canal, through which the spinal cord passes. First vertebrae is the atlas and it articulates with the occipital condyle. The vertebral column is differentiated into cervical 7, thoracic 12, lumbar 5, sacral 1 fused and coccygeal 1 fused region starting from the skull. Figure 20.7, vertebral column, right lateral view. The number of cervical vertebrae are 7 in almost all mammals including human beings. The vertebral column protects the spinal cord, supports the head and serves as the point of attachment for the ribs and musculature of the back. Sternum is a flat bone on the ventral midline of thorax. There are 12 pairs of ribs. Each rib is a thin flat bone connected dorsally to the vertebral column and ventrally to the sternum. It has two articulation surfaces on its dorsal end and is hence called bicephalic. First 7 pairs of ribs are called true ribs. Dorsally, they are attached to the thoracic vertebrae and ventrally connected to the sternum with the help of hyaline cartilage. The 8th, 9th and 10th pair of ribs do not articulate directly with the sternum but join the 7th rib with the help of hyaline cartilage. These are called vertebrochondral false ribs. The last two pairs, 11th and 12th of ribs, are not connected ventrally and are therefore called floating ribs. Thoracic vertebrae, ribs and sternum together form the rib cage. Figure 20.8. Figure 20.8 showing ribs and rib cage. The bones of the limbs along with their girdles constitute the appendicular skeleton. Each limb is made of 30 bones. The bones of the hand, forelimb are humerus, radius and Ulna, carpals wrist bone 18 number, metacarpals palm bone 5 in number, and phalanges digits 14 in number. Figure 20.9. Femur thigh bone, the longest bone. Tibia and fibula, tarsal ankle bone 7 in number, metatarsal 5 in number, and phalanges digit 14 in number, and the bones of the legs hind limb. Figure 20.10. A cup-shaped bone called patella covered the knee ventrally kneecap. Figure 20.9 showing right pectoral girdle and upper arm frontal view. Then figure 20.10 showing right pelvic girdle and lower limb bones frontal view. Pectoral and pelvic girdle bones help in the articulation of the upper and the lower limbs respectively with the axial skeletal. Each girdle is formed of two halves. Each half of pectoral girdle consists of a clavicle and a scapula. Figure 20.9. Scapula is a large triangular flat bone situated in the dorsal part of the thorax between the second and the seventh ribs. The dorsal flat triangular body of scapula has a slightly elevated ridge called the spine, which protects as a flat expanded process called the acromia. The clavicle articulates with this. Below the acromion is a depression called the glenoid cavity, which articulates with the head of the humerus to form the shoulder joint. Each clavicle is a long, slender bone with two curvature. This bone is commonly called the collarbone. Pelvic girdle consists of two coxal bone. Figure 20.10. Each coxal bone is formed by the fusion of three bones, ilium, ischium, and pubis. At the point of fusion of the above bones is a cavity called acetabulum, to which the thigh bone articulates. The two halves of the pelvic girdle meet ventrally to form the pubic symphysis containing fibrous cartilage. 20.4 Joints. Joints are essential for all types of movements involving the bony parts of the body. Locomotory movements are no exception too. The joints are a point of contact between bones or between bones to cartilage. Force generated by the muscle is used to carry out movement through joint, where the joint acts as the fulcrum. The movability of this joint vary depending on different factors. Joints have been classified into three major structural forms, namely fibrous joint, cartilaginous, and synovial. Fibrous joints do not allow any movement. This type of joint is shown by the flat skull bone, which fuse end to end with the help of dense fibrous connective tissue in the form of sutures to form the cranium. In cartilaginous joint, the bones involved are joined together with the help of cartilage. The joint between the adjacent vertebrae in the vertebral column is of this pattern and it permits limited movement. Synovial joints are characterized by the presence of a fluid-filled synovial cavity between the articulating surface of the two bones. Such an arrangement allows considerable movement. These joints help in locomotion and many other movements. Ball and socket joint between humerus and pectoral girdle, hinge joint, knee joint, pivot joint between atlas and axis, gliding joint between the carpals, and saddle joint between carpal and metacarpal of thumb are some examples. 20.5 Disorder of muscular and skeletal system. Myasthenia gravis, autoimmune disorder affecting neuromuscular junction leading to fatigue, weakening, and paralysis of skeletal muscular dystrophy, progressive degeneration of skeletal muscle, mostly due to genetic disorder. tetany, rapid spasm, wild contraction in muscle due to low calcium in body fluid, arthritis, inflammation of joints, osteoporosis, age-related disorder characterized by decreased bone mass and increased chances of fracture. Decreased level of estrogen is a common cause. Gout, inflammation of joints due to accumulation of uric acid crystal. Summary. Movement is an essential feature of all living beings. Protoplasmic streaming, ciliary movements, movements of fine limbs, wings, etc. are some forms exhibited by animal. A voluntary movement which causes the animal to change its place is called locomotion. Animals move generally in search of food, shelter, mate, breeding ground, better climate, or to protect themselves. The cell of the human body exhibited amoeboid, ciliary, and muscular movement. Locomotion and many other movements require coordinated muscular activities. Three types of muscle are present in our body: skeletal muscle and attached to skeletal elements. They appear striated and are voluntary in nature. Visceral muscle present in the inner wall of the visceral organ are non-striated and involuntary. Cardiac muscle are the muscle of the heart. They are striated, branched, and involuntary. Muscle possesses excitability, contractility, extensibility, and elasticity. Muscle fiber is the anatomical unit of muscle. Each muscle fiber has many parallelly arranged myofibrils. Each myofibril contains many serially arranged units called sarcomere, which are the functional unit. Each sarcomere has a central A band made of thick myosin filament and two half I band made of thin actin filament on either side of it marked by Z line. Actin and myosin are polymerized protein with contractility. The active site for myosin on resting actin filament are masked by a protein troponin. Myosin head contains ATPase and has ATP binding site and active sites for actin. A motor neuron carries signal to the muscle fiber which generates an action potential in it. This causes the release of calcium from sarcoplasmic reticulum. Calcium activates actin which binds to the myosin head to form a cross bridge. These cross bridges pull the actin filament, causing them to slide over the myosin filament and thereby causing contraction. Calcium are then returned to sarcoplasmic reticulum which inactivated the actin. Cross bridges are broken and the muscle relax. Repeated stimulation of muscle lead to fatigue. Muscle are classified as red and white fibers based primarily on the amount of red color myoglobin pigment in them. Bones and cartilages constitute our skeletal system. The skeletal system is divisible into axial and perpendicular and appendicular. Skull, vertebral column, ribs, and sternum constitute the axial skeleton. Limb bones, and girdle form the appendicular skeleton. Three types of joints are formed between bones or between bones and cartilage: fibrous, cartilaginous, and synovial. Synovial joints allow considerable movement and therefore play a significant role in locomotion. Thank you.